What
Hey.
up? It's your boy.
What, you want to do the intro?
No, you don't.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Endstep, the Upkeep Aftershow. We just played budget decks, $50-ish in the rough ballpark. It was quite the crazy game. A lot more high power, high stakes, a lot more interaction than I was expecting this game to go. If you haven't seen that game, go back and watch it. And if you have seen it, buckle up. Let's talk about the game. Does anyone have a favorite moment from the game? Was there at any point where you like, dang, that was really cool?
I mean, for me, when I went from no creatures on the board to, or one creature on the board to like 5 or 6, because Simic be doing Simic things.
I'm so stupid.
For Tommy, it's just
That
a
was
meme
fun.
of Obama giving himself a medal.
I mean, kind
Tommy
of though.
giving
That
himself.
was probably my favorite moment, just because like this is a deck I don't have a deck quite like this at all, like in my other decks. So it's just my other decks just don't do that, and it's really fun to be able to just pop off like that. Even if I didn't win, still it's just fun to do that. So
My favorite was probably Tommy getting that counterspell off.
oh god, yeah, the counter spell was nice
yes,
too.
I actually had the ability to kill him on my turn.
Mm-hmm.
So had you not countered Brea,
I
you
would've.
countering Brea, kept me from obviously being able to kill you, but I would have been able to kill you and further secure my position on the board to where I don't know if I would have won, but I felt pretty decent about my chances. So definitely kind of a bummer. Well,
Yeah.
Steven, did you have any moment you wanted to highlight, or were you just...
No, like, that game was so underwhelming for this deck. Like, this deck
Yeah.
is so much better than that. And I just was so mana screwed throughout the whole game. There's so much I could have done if I just even just had like 1 or 2 more mana. Like,
You have 37 lands, right?
37 lands and plenty
lot
of
of-
mana ramp.
Plenty of mana ramp. You have a handful of mana
Wasn't
dorks.
getting anything.
You
Like,
have mana dorks, you have mana rocks. I mean, you've got it's there.
I
You
wasn't
just were
drawing
getting
it.
screwed on it.
Did you have like the power in your hand? You just weren't getting enough lands for
Yeah,
everything?
yeah. No, I had some great power. I got some great stuff in my hand, but I just...
I guess we
couldn't-
saw.
Yeah, you saw. I mean, you saw it a little bit. Yeah.
Well, so Steven, why don't you start us off on the next question, which are there any cards that you want to highlight? Are there any cards that if you had played that it would have at least better secured your position?
Closer to the end, in my hand, I had Titan of Industry. 4, 3 green. It's a 7/7 elemental creature with reach and trample. When it enters the battlefield, choose 2. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Target player gains 5 life. Create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. Put a shield counter on a creature you control. So what I would have done is, I definitely would have put a shield counter of Titan of Industry, so that at least he could take
That's 2 turns of blocking.
That's 2
my
turns of
commander.
blocking your commander. I was 1 mana away from casting because I only had 6 the whole game. 6 for a mono green deck. I just was not drawing it. It was just not my game. I did also have Sandwell Convergence, which would have helped me. Sandwell Convergence for 6 and 2 green enchantment. Creatures with flying can't attack me or planeswalkers I control. At the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. Couple other cards. Unnatural Growth for 1 and 4 green enchantment. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do this with not a mono green deck because it's just 4 green blips is a lot, but it's perfect in a mono green deck. Myogen, I don't know how to say it. Of Towering Might for 5 and 3 green. It's an 8/8 legendary creature spirit. When it enters the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it, if you cast it from your hand, you can remove an indestructible counter from him and distribute 8 1/1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. They gain trample until end of turn. Just a way of buffing up your creatures. And
It's a
giving
more
them
fair
trample.
way to end the game.
Yeah, I also I don't think it's in the deck currently, but I at least at some point had Decimator of the Provinces in there, which is like a more fair, less powerful
Crater of
Behemoth. Yeah. Sadly, I just did not do what I wanted to do this game because I was mana screwed. So
What about you, Tommy? Was there any cards you wanted to highlight, or did you kind of basically get to utilize it? I mean, and this isn't the first time we've seen this deck either. Jason played this deck in episode 5.
The only one that comes to mind that would have been fun to see is one we saw that Jason played back on the Christmas episode was Walk the Eons. He took like 4 or 5 extra turns.
I think it was 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5 extra turns and won the game off of that. That obviously is like a huge moment.
should not put that card in.
Yeah, that card is kind of busted at this power level for the budget.
So
but
standalone question for Preston. What the hell, dude? Like,
I was worried that deck is so slow. I had to put some cards like that in there, and I had some money to work with within the budget. So it was like,
to be fair, I was down to at least 20 or lower life before I really got to do anything.
yeah.
So it's like
Why do you think I was
I'm
attacking you?
well,
Because
yeah.
I know what
No,
that
yeah,
deck
you
can
guys
do.
knew it was a threat. That's why
Yeah.
I'm like I didn't fault you guys for attacking me. Like that's just gonna happen. It's a very powerful deck. And if I was playing it against more aggressive decks, I probably could have even been taken out of the game before I was even able to do anything.
Also, if you're wondering why Tommy has this deck now, they decided to trade after the game.
I think
But
we
you
did
would
that.
know
we did
if
that
you watched
during-
Endstep.
Yeah,
If you watched the after show,
Yeah,
it was in the
if you
after
watched,
show.
Yeah, if you watched Endstep 5, then you saw that happen.
Yep.
But yeah, and you made a couple minor upgrades, right?
A couple minor upgrades. I just wasn't able before that we filmed this game to get the really good stuff that I'd like to add. But I made a couple of minor changes to it.
Well, a couple cards I wanted to highlight is you did get to see early on in the game, I think probably turn 3, maybe 4, you got to saw Tribute Mage, which is 3 mana 2/2 when it enters the battlefield. I search for an artifact with mana value 2 to put into my hand. I just ended up looking for Arcane Signet, but there is a combo in the deck that this finds both pieces of the combo. So the 2 cards that are part of the combo are Sword of the Meek, which is 2 mana equipment that says equipped creature gets +1/+2. Equip it for 2, and whenever a 1/1 creature comes into play under your control, you may return Sword of the Meek from your graveyard to play, then attach it to that creature. And then the other card is Thopter Foundry for an Orzhov hybrid mana and a blue. It's an artifact that says pay 1, sack a non-token artifact, create a 1/1 Thopter creature token, and gain a life. So basically how this works is you get them both into play, you sacrifice the Sword of the Meek to the Thopter Foundry, which will create the Thopter. And because that's a 1/1, that'll bring the Sword of the Meek back into play from your graveyard, and you can just do that over and over again. So it's not like an infinite combo.
Because you need mana.
You need mana to do it.
yeah.
But basically, for every 1 mana that you spend, you get a life and a Thopter. So it's pretty fun. Just another note about my deck is obviously the Reckless Fireweaver is one of the better cards in the deck. It
was a thorn in our side the whole game.
It dealt a decent amount of damage. It would have killed Tommy had he not countered Brea. But it made me think that I am not running any of the artifact lands in this deck. Not for budget reasons. I could have wiggled
They're
the
not
budget.
expensive.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
could have
they're
wiggled
not,
the budget around to have them. It was more of a matter of I'm so scared. Because if someone does like destroy all artifacts and it hits your lands, that hurts.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
really sucks. But I think because Reckless Fireweaver is so important to the deck, and there are just a couple other artifact-specific synergies here and there, it might just be worth running them. So I don't know if I don't think I'm going to bring this back for Revenge Week. The last episode of the season, everyone's going to bring back one deck from throughout the season that they feel like didn't quite get to show off all the way. I don't think this is the deck I'm going to bring back. But if I do, that's an addition I want to make to the deck before we get there. But Preston, what are a couple cards that you want to tell us about?
So I have a couple board wipes. Normally I don't love board wipes because I don't like messing with my own stuff, but these ones are cool because I can use them to sort of keep going with my game plan. I have Damning Verdict, which destroys all creatures with no counters on them, so my commander will usually live that. And then Slash the Ranks, destroy all creatures and planeswalkers except for commanders. So that also keeps my commander safe. We have Brilliant Restoration. It's a sorcery. Costs 7, 4 white and 3 generic, which a little white heavy, but the deck is a little white heavy, so that's fine. It returns all artifact enchantment cards from my graveyard to the battlefield in case someone blows board wipes all my stuff away. Some good creatures are Anok Bondkin and Abden Falconer. They both have a thing where they give a benefit to creatures with +1/+1 counters, which the Bondkin gives First Strike and the Falconer gives Flying. Mirrorworks is an artifact that costs 5. Whenever a non-token artifact enters the battlefield, I can pay 2 generic to make a copy of that, so more sacrifice fodder. And I love this card, but I don't think it's that good in most decks, but it's pretty good here. Call for Unity. It's a 5-cost enchantment, 3 generic, 2 white. A Revolt at the beginning of my end step. If a permanent I control left the battlefield this turn, I put a Unity counter on it. My creatures get +1/+1 for each Unity counter on it, which I'm trying to do that each turn anyways. So yeah,
That is pretty iffy, but I can see it being decent in that deck. So I think this game really illustrated, and really episode 5, because they were all $50-ish decks or less in that game as well. But I think we've come across the obvious, which is that budget does not mean weaker in power level by any means. I feel like maybe not all of these decks, but I feel like some of them are going to hold their own perfectly fine at a table. So I don't think we need to necessarily question the power level of budget decks, but I do have a question on what do you think is the hardest part about building budget decks?
So for me, because I just took a deck that I already had that was already like not super over the budget. So what I did was just take really expensive cards out, like Primordial Hydra. Restricting yourself to a budget means that there are some cards that obviously you're not going to have, like, because we set a budget of $50. One copy of Teferi's Protection is like, what, 30 almost?
I think the cheapest
like
ones are like
half-
20 something. So
like half your budget right there. There are just some cards that you're going to have to cut.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you're thinking too, Tommy?
This one, it's a little weird for me to be talking about it now because I didn't build this deck. Preston did, but I mean, just trying to keep on a budget. Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing is just finding that one piece where you're like, man, that fits perfectly. That's synergizes well with the deck, a nice win con, whatever it is, but it's $20-$30, and for one of the 99, even for a commander, that's a lot. You know,
Yeah.
if you're building on a budget, or even if you're not necessarily building on a budget, but you're just like, you know, everyday Joe Schmo with not thousands of dollars to sling around at Magic decks for a CEDH deck, you know.
Yeah, I mean that is true. Because another combo I wanted to put in this deck was the I have another deck that has this combo, but it's Brea, Ashnod's Altar, and Nim Deathmantle, and you basically create infinite colorless mana and then infinite tokens, and then those infinite mana and infinite tokens you then can sacrifice to Brea to just kill everyone. At the time of recording this, Ashnod's Altar did just get reprinted, so it's at the point where I maybe could have fit it into the budget, but it's enough that I probably still wouldn't. But I think the hardest part is the more colors you play, the harder it is to build a good mana base.
Yeah.
You guys didn't necessarily have to deal with this, right? Steven had a monocolor deck. You guys had 2-color decks. I was playing 4 colors. I think that if I were to do this again, I would... for budget, I would not go over 3 colors because a huge portion of my budget ended up going to lands, so I could have some decent... I mean, even then, I don't have like the best mana base. Like, obviously, I don't have shocks. I don't have a lot of decent...
You couldn't fit the original dual lands in
I
there?
could
Yeah,
not fit
right?
the OG duels. That's about 6 times my budget.
For one of them.
Yeah, so to me, the hardest thing is, I think if you're playing 1-2, no worries at all. If you're playing 3, still pretty doable. But going into 4 colors, I can't imagine trying to play 5 colors on a budget.
Yeah.
But that was the hardest part for me. Did you have anything else to add?
So I've built this deck for budget week, and I built the 4 decks during Christmas week on a budget around the same thing. So I probably have the most to say here, like at least experience-wise. Even the 2-color, like you think that would be easier, but it was still kind of obnoxious getting good dual lands in 2 colors on a budget.
Well, and my thing is...
Not
like,
terrible, but...
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want... You need some dual lands, right? You have to have some mana fixing, but I just think that in general, if you just even through like 50-50 of your 2 basics, it can only go so bad for you. If you have a decent amount of card draw, you have other ways to fix your mana, whether it's the Signet, or if you're playing green, you have land ramp, so there's ways to fix your mana. I feel like even just going 50-50 on your basics, and then just having a handful of duels, it can't be that bad.
Well, the thing specifically that's tricky is whenever you have cards that like are more specific which mana cost you want. So that can make a huge impact on which cards you can play. Even if they're budget, the Restoration that has like 4,
Brilliant
right?
Restoration.
Mm-hmm. So that one's really tricky to be able to play.
Was it Thunderous Snapper or something that's 4
But
4
that can
green
go
or
either
blue.
color.
It can go either color, but it's still
Your mana
4,
rocks don't work for it.
Right, it's still 4 colored mana, which is a lot for something like that.
What do you guys think about these decks? Are you guys going to keep them? Are you going to upgrade them? If you do upgrade them, are you going to keep them budget? Steven, this is a deck that you already had. Are you just going to take it back to its normal form?
Yeah, I'm just going to take it back to its normal form. There's a chance I would... Well, let me ask a question real quick. If I brought this back for Revenge Week, could I make my regular upgrades back to the deck?
No, I don't see why not.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Because at this point, with when we're recording this, it's going to be, for me, Budget Week, or not Budget Week, I'm sorry, Revenge Week, it's going to be either Ronos or Atrix and Nev. I'm probably leaning more towards Atrix and Nev, but there's a chance I might feel bringing Ronos back, especially when I make my good additions back to it.
What about you, Tommy? I know you're keeping this deck. I know you're upgrading it.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep it in the budget range, or are you going to just kind of be like, if it goes over budget, whatever?
I'm going to try and keep it not crazy expensive, just because I don't have a lot of money to sling at Magic cards in general.
Because let's also keep in mind, for your budget, your power level is really high.
It's a really powerful deck for the budget, yeah. So I think I'm pretty happy with how it is now. I have a few upgrades I could make to it, and I think I might see how much those cost and stuff like that. But I'm really happy with how it is right now in its current form, honestly. The only thing that I have off the top of my head that I want to do is I might find something to replace Walk the Eons, because I know how we feel about extra turns being kind of obnoxious. Even if you're using it to win the game, it's still like, So I might find something to replace.
There's other win cons out there that aren't as miserable to play against.
Right, that aren't just like, okay, cool, I'm going to not let my friends do anything for the next 20 minutes. I'll take 5 turns.
We're just going to sit here like...
Yeah, it's like, all right, well,
as you're cascading like...
Cool, I'm cascading at 4 times a turn, take 4 turns at once. Yes, I mean, I'm probably going to take that out and find something to replace it. But I will keep that around in case I want to swap it back in for whatever reason for like a game or something.
I am not looking forward to editing this game. There's so much cascade. I'm not looking forward to this at all.
Yeah.
We all have decks that can get a little solitary. You don't have any yet, so I don't even care if you keep it in there.
Well, yeah, right. That's the thing. And so Ishin kind of can get that way, and with some of the upgrades I'm making to it, it will get closer to that, but I still don't think it's quite on the level of this, just because of the time it takes to cascade when I'm doing it 3 or 4 times a turn.
Right. So Preston, what about you? Are you going to keep that as a budget deck, or are you going to take it apart? What are you kind of thinking?
I'm definitely keeping it. I actually really love how this deck came out. I don't think I need to upgrade it that much. Like, I could get some more expensive powerful artifacts in here, and I'm sure I will eventually, because I do like the deck, but I've played it off the channel like 5-6 times probably, and I think I've won at least half of them against your guys' regular decks. So it really doesn't need a huge boost in power. It's already, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That shows us that we need to play more removal.
I think we do need to play more removal in our play group. I've been better about it. Jason's okay about it, but the rest of you are like,
I actually have a decent bit in here. But...
So if we do another budget week, I would much rather just start from scratch and build a new deck. So for me, I have another artifact-themed deck that I want to build, but it's like the best commander for it is still Brea, and this is my second Brea deck because I have... my CEDH deck is Brea. So it's like, do I need 3 Brea decks? No, I don't. So I don't think I'm going to keep this deck together. I'm probably going to upgrade and just turn it into a normal artifact deck and not worry about budget. And then if we do budget week again in a future season, then I will probably just start from scratch. But so we already kind of talked about what our chances are on bringing stuff back for Revenge Week. You kind of decided no. I decided no. What are you thinking about? Are you going to bring this back for Revenge Week or?
I won, so probably.
Oh, yeah, so I can't.
I don't know. Everything's a blur.
You don't even need to be there.
And that's the other thing with this.
It's just going to be Tommy and I.
So you're thinking you're going to bring this back, or are you?
It's a possibility.
Okay.
It's a possibility.
If this one hadn't won the Christmas game, even though I wasn't playing it, Jason was, I might think about bringing it back. But because it won, I'm just gonna, even though I wasn't playing it, the deck itself still won, and it's mostly 99% in its original form, so I'm just not.
Last question, real quick. Other than your own, whose deck at the table do you think is the most interesting? Or your most favorite, or a deck that you could see yourself playing something like it?
I want to say Tommy, but I built the deck. I do love Mono Green Smashy, but I have decks like that already, so I guess yours by default.
I would probably say Preston's, just because I like the whole idea of the background. I've never really messed with, this is my first companion deck. I've never had a partner deck. I've never had a background deck. So just the idea of having kind of 2 things in the command zone, quote unquote, is a cool idea. That, and then just kind of the way it works of building up the commander as your primary.
It's basically a Voltron deck.
Yeah.
I also would probably vote Preston's because I actually also have Clancrafter in my deck. I just think it's a I just like the card.
a
But
good card.
yeah, I think background is an interesting new way to do like partners, because I think like the newer partner cards are fair, or like the partner with, like you don't get to choose, like it has to be those partner pairs. I think those are all really cool.
But because the original partners are there, it feels bad not to pick those because they're so much better
they're
a
just
lot
so
of times.
strong, but yeah. All right, guys.
I say, nerd. I think that although Tommy's power is a lot higher, and it's really cool that he's able to do cascading and the power level's really there, I might have to go with Morgan's deck, because, I mean, I wouldn't build another Simic deck anytime soon, at least. Your deck is at least, like, interesting. It has, like, it just does different things than what my usual playstyle is. Because I built the Ronos deck when I was still relatively earlier into Magic, and it's a simple deck, and it just not even in its regular form. It's not that.
It's also fun to say
Pricey.
Thopter a bunch.
Yeah, honestly, that was I built this deck as a joke, and I was like, oh man, this is really awesome. I just get to play a bunch of Thopter tokens. I mean, there are a couple cards in this deck that are intentionally bad that I kept in the deck just because they made Thopters. So, I mean, yeah.
But if it makes Thopters in a Thopter deck, is it really bad?
No, it's still pretty
Yeah,
bad.
it could still be bad, but...
Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion, talking a little bit more about the game, talking a little bit more about our decks. Tune in next Friday for another game. That game, the other guys, Preston, Steven, Tommy, and our friend Jason, who's been in a bunch of other episodes, they are, each of them, going to play one of my commander decks and put them all against each other, see which ones came up on top. They got free reign. I have, I think, 20 commander decks. They got to basically pick whichever one they wanted. I think it's going to be a really interesting mashup, so make sure you're here for that, and we will see you guys later.